Happy Friday, Miami. This is Buy, Sell, Hold Miami, a real estate podcast. We're going to spend the next hour talking about some of the biggest stories going on in the South Florida real estate market. I'm Peter Zalewski. I'm a condo consultant and also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. I'm joined here by my host. He's actually going to moderate the discussion. No one else than Daniel Hernandez from Compass Real Estate. His office is over in Coconut Grove. He does single-family houses as well as condos. Daniel, with that, let me pass you the baton and let's run.
What is up, Peter? Happy Friday, and happy Friday to anybody who actually tuned in on time. It's Miami time, 4 o'clock. I put 4:05 on YouTube. It is 4:10 on October the 24th, almost Halloween 2025, and this is episode 23 of Buy, Sell, Hold. Peter, we've almost been at this for 6 months. That is wild. Wild.
Yeah, I think we're making some serious progress. You know, we went into the summer talking about how we were going to build something, and now hopefully we're at cruising altitude. We've been able to take off, and now we're cruising, and we're going to be able to bang these things out. We're going to continue to bring great information, great perspective, I think, to the audience.
Well, we might be able to take a direct flight to Tokyo on Japan Airlines, but we'll talk about that later. Everybody who hasn't joined us before, this is Buy, Sell, Hold Miami. And I'm just going to give you a little purview into what our format's like. If you hate it, you can email Peter. He takes all of our comment cards. I don't think he reads them, but send them to him nonetheless. And so every week, Peter and I throw 5 or 6 stories back and forth, and we select a few to talk about. We have you for an hour, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Hey, it's fluid. And at the end of each topic, we're either going to buy, sell, or hold, because we don't have enough information and we're adults and we can admit when we don't know something. So with that, Peter, I want to jump in to something that kind of, I won't say bland, but very relevant. And it's State Bill 180. Oh, God, we have to go up to Tallahassee and talk about the legislature. So State Bill 180 was signed into law by Governor Ron DeSantis on June the 26th, just this past summer. And why do we care? And I'm going to read you the text, the relevant text from the state bill, and maybe you can get it. So each county listed in the federal disaster declaration for Hurricane Debby, Hurricane Helene, or Hurricane Milton, and each municipality within one of those counties may not propose or adopt any moratorium on construction, reconstruction, or redevelopment of any property damaged by such hurricanes. And then the 2 other bullet points, and this is what really peeved people, and this is why actually the state's getting sued. More restrictive or burdensome amendments to its comprehensive plan or land development regulations, or more restrictive or burdensome procedures concerning review, approval, or issuance of a site plan development permit or development order. That was a lot, but Peter, what I want to ask you is, when I read you restrictive or burdensome, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think they're moving against zoning. I don't think they want zoning. I think they want to open it up and whatever you want to put up.
How can you not want zoning? You need zoning.
Well, you need zoning, but you also need mangroves. And this bill goes directly against mangroves. And mangroves, in real simple terms, anybody that knows what a mangrove is, it looks like it's a plant that's growing on the water, and there's no dirt around it. So it's kind of doing what it does. There's all kind of fish and wildlife that hang out there. If you're around there in the summer, it smells, there's mosquitoes. But what it does is it's first line of defense. So as the water starts to move in, right?
Against erosion and all this crap, right?
So what it does, it might not look good. It might block your view, but it actually serves a purpose. And as mangroves disappear, you basically have greater vulnerability. You got greater exposure for any of the problems we're dealing with. And hey, Daniel, can we say climate change? Is that permissible in our style for the podcast?
Yeah, we can say climate change, even though we're in Florida.
Okay.
I think we can say climate change. Shit, I think, Peter, I'd let you say global warming if you wanted to say it.
No, listen, let's not push it too far. Let's not get way out there.
Okay. Rising seas? I don't think
Rising
that's too
seas.
crazy. So,
Yep.
The reason why I brought this up is because the Herald wrote a pretty lengthy article. I think it came out in the Sunday paper last week. And Manatee County is getting development really kind of steamrolled in there. And several municipalities, even within Dade County, which isn't mentioned in any of these disaster relief plans, including Miami Shores, Pinecrest. I think Homestead is in this lawsuit to try to get a stay from this state bill, because they're saying that developers are effectively just retroactively saying any zoning since 2024 is bullshit. That's what this is saying. So it really takes the power away from the municipalities.
Which sounds a lot like Live Local Act, which sounds a lot like eliminating property taxes. Sounds like
I see a
bit
trend.
Well, I mean, if you take away the power or the ability to raise money, either through taxing or bonding out stuff, and you put it in Tallahassee, I would assume if you don't kiss the ring, chances are you're not going to be getting the money necessary to go forward. But this seems like an overall theme of trying to shift power away from the local perspective and put it up in Tallahassee. Not to take a political perspective, because I don't think I am. But I'm a registered independent for what it's worth. I've been a registered independent NBA from the beginning. But some of it's just kind of, it kind of shocks you. Don't locals tend to know a little bit more about what's going on in their backyard and work towards preserving their backyard rather than having somebody else somewhere else make a decision? And now suddenly you have to adjust to it, even if it doesn't make sense locally.
Well, what I want to know, and what even the sleuths at the Herald couldn't figure out, is where this restrictive and burdensome language came from. Like, this is some Faulkner shit. Like, it's very vague language. Restrictive and burdensome. And what anything can be zoning is restrictive and burdensome. That tree there is restrictive and burdensome. If I'm trying to build a building, if I'm a developer, and listen, we don't dislike developers. We love buildings in progress. Peter sells condos. I love condos. But if there's zoning and there's a piece of land and there's a tree on that piece of land, that is restrictive to the development of that land. And so a developer could argue, if you're in one of these counties and a hurricane comes through, as hurricanes come through, that, after the hurricane, that hurricane came through and now I can't build this thing here because this tree that's been there for 150 years, it's restrictive and burdensome to my 300-unit condominium building. That's not the spirit of this law, but that's how it's being exploited.
Now, I am not making a connection. I'm not pointing the finger. I'm simply going to tell a story based on what happened a few years back with a very prominent local architect whose work is all over South Florida.
I know what you're going to say.
It's all over the world. And this gentleman happened to buy a piece of dirt, and he had this, what would have been a great waterfront location. Kind of like if you ever go around Lake Okeechobee, you can be right on the lake, but you can't see it because they built this big dike. So you had this obstruction, and this particular architect, you know what? Yeah, it blocks my view. Let's go ahead and chainsaw it.
Right after a hurricane came through, by the way.
And say it was as a result of pile on of any kind of destruction, any kind of like wiggle room, and lo and behold, got caught. And what ultimately
by a neighbor with a cell phone, mind you.
By a neighbor with a cell phone. So what ultimately happens? You pay the fee and you go away. You don't ask for permission.
But the mangroves were ripped out of the ground.
But the value,
some of them, right?
Talk about the value changing dramatically if suddenly I can see the water versus suddenly or before I'm sitting with all these these plants growing that smell, and there's mosquitoes and there's all kinds of fish. But again, it's critical. And this is the push-pull. So maybe what we're saying, Daniel, is because of the development that's occurring, maybe we're running out of the easy land to go ahead and turn into waterfront and sold for top dollar. Because remember, we don't have state income tax. And as a result, property taxes are a big driver of filling the coffers of the school board, the county.
Wait, I thought we were getting rid of property taxes.
Well, I heard a conversation on WLRN today about that. That sounds like it's going to be a pissing match. So we'll have to see how that goes forward. But I'm sure WLRN will have a piece. Maybe we can talk about it next week, some of the different perspectives.
Get him, Tom.
Yeah, exactly. But if I could, just to refer to that piece, and I'm going to refer to some stories that came out. Let me just read it to you verbatim. Architect Hanukkah founder Bernardo Fort Brescia and his wife, Lorinda Spear, they were cited for illegally cutting mangroves at their home in Coconut Grove after Hurricane Irma in 2017. They were ordered by Miami-Dade County to replace the trees and restore the wetlands, and agreed to a settlement that including fines and a plan to replant the area. It says it was an illegal removal because after Hurricane Irma, the couple used chainsaws and heavy machinery to cut down to protect the mangroves, allegedly to clear the view of the bay for their home. This was a violation of a previous agreement with the county. It goes on to say that Miami-Dade's environmental regulators, they cited them for illegal removal and ordered them to replace them. Ultimately, what was the fee, Daniel, according to the report? $18,500, according to WLRN. You're going to tell me if you have the potential to have this beautiful view, but right now it's blocked by mangroves, which bring mosquitoes and smells, $18,500 to make it go away. What do you think that did to valuations?
Oh, I mean, blocking a view versus not blocking a view on the bay. Millions.
Kind of makes you rethink
millions,
a bunch of dirt that's out there.
Well, we don't have this on the rundown today, but you were talking about, the lack of water for real estate, which is a farce because there's plenty of it. I'll say the lack of bay, like readily available bayfront real estate, right? Because it's basically all being land banked by the Gentings and Ken Billions of the world. But folks are going upriver now, and so you're hearing of these condominium development projects up the Miami River, which, guys, it's a little Havana. Just call it what it is. It's not West Brickell. It's Little Havana. You're on the river in Little Havana. For all those drawbridges, like people know the drawbridges, like the Brickell Avenue drawbridge and the 3rd Avenue drawbridge. What's west of that? There are more drawbridges. You've just never driven on any of them. But that's Little Havana, and so that's up. We're going upriver now, and you're seeing Jay Roberts, Prosper Group. He's all over the news because he's pretty prolific on social media. But he just secured a 3-parcel condo development site right there on the river. And everybody's like, wow, that's amazing. It's like, even 5 years ago, you'd be like, build it on the river. But hey, so SB 180, restrictive and burdensome. Buy, sell, hold. I guess the question is, well, is it bullshit? Is it a developer grab? Is it a gift to developers, as the Miami Herald says?
I'm a sell on this because the reason people come down here is the weather and the natural beauty. And if you start interfering with some of the stuff that basically keeps us safe and stops flooding and other things, I think the only thing you do is mix up the ecosystem and the way things kind of work. I mean, listen, if you're buying mangrove fronted property, you're getting a discount on the dirt. Now suddenly go and take a chainsaw, according to that press report, like the guy from Architectonica does, and cut it down for $18,500 as part of the settlement, according to WLRN. I don't like that. I would much rather have the property have to be not only restored, but then maybe money taken and dedicated towards putting in more mangrove somewhere else, just to make sure that it's punitive. Because $18,500 doesn't sound like much of a hit to all of a sudden get this great view. So I am a hard sell, pound the table. Let locals decide.
I don't have the sound effects today. We will get the sound effects in the near future. All right, moving on. Peter loves to talk about the economy. He's basically my more handsome, personal Jerome Powell. That's what I'm going by. Peter, so inflation indicators are indicating a drop in interest rates coming up? Question.
All right, so here's what we got. The Federal Reserve, which is the central bank of the United States, is led by a guy called Jerome Powell. Old man Powell from this point forward.
Jerry.
So old man Powell, yep. So old man Powell's got two responsibilities. One is get inflation at or below 2%. The other one is maximum employment, maximum jobs. As we all know, during the pandemic, there were supply chain issues. Everybody had a bunch of cash, and they were buying stuff, and there weren't enough workers to either deliver it or manufacture it. And that led to a just huge run-up in inflation, which hit 9.1%. Fast forward to kind of where we are. Jerome Powell was moving towards 2%, which was the goal, got very close. In April, he hit 2.3%. This was right around the time that the Liberation Day tariffs came out, right around the time that we started to experience some of the trade wars, some of the immigration policies, a variety of different things. So since then, the inflation numbers, remember, one of two, inflation numbers have started headed upward. Now, this week, They should have been announced last week, but remember, the government's shut and they blew out the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So this week, they made an exception from the government shutdown, and they brought back some of the economists. They put together numbers, and what did they find? They found that inflation is now running at 3% year over year. We were at 2.3% in April. Now we're at 3%. Fed's got two jobs, get inflation to 2%. Well, what happened? In August, they started seeing bad news with the job market, so they pivoted. They said, inflation, we don't really care about it anymore after 42 months. Let's shift to the job market, which is eroding quickly.
But we don't have job numbers, right? Because that data's not coming out.
We also didn't get job numbers. So now we got inflation heading back up, and we got concerns about the job market, but we don't have job data. So what are we doing? We're cutting interest rates. Why? Because if you cut interest rates, it should spur investment, which i.e. should spur jobs. But at the same point, when you cut interest rates, it makes money much more readily available, and therefore housing takes off and people have more buying power. So we are stuck in what Jerome Powell, old man Powell, calls a two-sided risk, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better anytime soon for old man Powell.
So, and I want to clarify something, because I actually just learned this today, right? So there's the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, which is released, and then there's the Core Consumer Price Index, which is what the Fed uses to make their decision. And the difference between the core CPI and CPI is that core CPI excludes fuel and food. Why do they do that? They say because those are particularly volatile consumer goods. And so when you exclude the volatility, you get a clearer picture. So the Fed uses the core CPI numbers. And that is up, what'd you say, 20 bips since August?
Yeah, it was 2 point. I have it right here in front of me. Let me read it out to you. So it was in April, we came in at 2.3. And then we're at 3 now. Previous month was 2.9. Prior to that, 2.7. Prior to that, 2.67. And then in June, 2.35 and 2.31 ultimately in May, and 2.39 in April. So yeah, we've been humming around 2.3, and then we started spiking effectively beginning in July.
So of all the data compilation that the federal government does on a regular basis, this is the only data that they put people back in the office to work on. This is it. This is like the holy grail of data output for the federal government. So important that even during the second longest federal government shutdown in the history of America, they're putting people back to work for this.
But because it's pegged to Social Security benefits. That's why they made the exception.
Because it's pegged to Social Security benefits. That makes sense.
Yeah, and they have to make an adjustment for
the cost of living benefit, the cost of living adjustment.
Correct. Now, what I will tell you is, because inflation moved up from 2.9 to 2.3, stock market went up. It went up. Why did it go up?
Market's going up no matter what. They could drop an A-bomb on a country that you never heard of, and the stock market would go up because NVIDIA put the chip in it. I don't know.
No, here's why it went up. Here's why it went up. It went up. Dow was up 1.01%. The S&P 0.79%. NASDAQ 1.15%. Why did it go up? It went up because Wall Street thought inflation was coming in at 3.1, and we only came in at 3. So
we beat expectations. Right. It's like the company's doing fine, but we're still going to lay off 25,000 people.
That's great. That's great news. So what do you do as a consumer? What do you do as a consumer? Well, inflation's going up. So I would encourage you, if you see a good deal, stock up. Coffee, part of it has to do with tariffs.
30-year vintage condos, stock up on those too.
Stock up. Well, let me just tell you on the coffee. I was trying to front run the market. So when Presidente or Sedanos, I tend to go to the Latin markets for that.
Told me
I was getting bricks of coffee. It was coffee, cafe, was nothing else. $2.79 a brick.
You called it a brick, Peter.
You know how much it goes for now?
What?
If you get Pilan, it's like $7.99 for one. If you get most of them, they're going to come in at $5.99, $6.99. So I would tell people inflation is going up, that there's certain essentials, and also pay attention to what's going on with tariffs. There's certain things, if you got a chance, stock up. That's why they're putting limits on certain products. Like Presidente will put a limit on how much coffee you can get when they give you a deal. Honestly, so you need to be stocking up on that. And what it's going to mean for everybody else, well, people getting Social Security, they should get a little bit of a bump, but is the bump they're going to get in their monthly payments, is that enough to keep up with kind of where we're going? Remember what Jerome Powell said, old man Powell, these tariffs that have been put in place as a result of Liberation Day, which we were below 4% on average, we're now over 17% on average, according to Morgan Stanley. What Jay Powell said is the tariffs will not be implemented fully because companies are taking a hit early on, not going to be implemented fully until we get into 2027. So we are just at the early stages, and that inflation number is probably likely to go up.
Nah, but we think we're a constituency that thinks in nanoseconds, Peter. We can't think of 2027. Heck, and we're going to get to it in a few more topics, but we couldn't even build a bridge when we said we were going to build a bridge.
Well, and one last point, Daniel, 6.19 is now the 30-year fix. Mortgage rate, according to Mortgage News Daily, as of today. So we're seeing these mortgage rates start to come down. Why? Because they really think that Powell is going to be cutting 2 more times. Remember, they meet next week, so we could see another 25 basis point next week. They don't meet in November.
You think we could see more than 25 basis points, or you think he'll be as conservative as he can?
Well, let me tell you what. If they go more than 25 basis points, which is just simply a movement, if they go 50,
and Art Basel comes into town, Basel, I never know how to say it.
But think about what message that's sending to the world, or at least to the economy, that you need to cut interest rates more because you're so worried about the job market. And then interest rates are low, but do people have money to buy this stuff? That's the push-pull. That's
you don't care what interest rates are if you don't have a job. It's smooth.